Copyright in Australia. There's a cartoon on the screen. Take a minute to read it. You mightn't understand it, so you might want to come back at the end of the video and see if it makes sense then. Keep in mind, abolition means to abolish or get rid of. The learning intentions of this lesson are to understand the terms copyright, fair dealing, public domain, and attribution, and to understand when and how you can use other people's work for your own use. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to give examples that are not covered by Australian copyright laws and explain why it is unethical to use someone else's work without attribution. You should also be able to explain how to use copyrighted works in your own studies. Let's start by looking at this cartoon. You need to read the words, look at the symbols, study the drawings. Sometimes body language and facial expressions can give you more information about the people that you're looking at. Look at the fine detail as well as the big picture. There are 3 questions to answer about this image. Pause the video while you answer them. The first one is, what do you see in the image? Then explain the meaning of the cartoon. And then what do you wonder about copyright after analysing this cartoon? What else do you need to know about that's not explained? Pause now while you answer these questions. You may have noticed the symbol that is a C in a circle, which represents copyright, and the words can be interpreted as saying that the man reading them will be arrested. Infringement means breaking the law, which of course is not true. The next few slides will explain why. So what is copyright? Copyright gives creators of work control over their creations. It's a legal framework that is applied automatically when the work is created. The work does not have to be registered. It doesn't protect ideas, information, facts, styles, techniques, names, titles or slogans, but it does protect novels, hard copy or digital, textbooks, picture books, documents like PDFs or text on web pages, plays, screenplays, paintings, photos, drawings, sculptures and more. These can be hard copy works or online works. And now it's time for you to write your own definition of copyright using this information. Pause the video if you need to. Another student activity. Pause the video again to make sure you've got enough time to work out which of these icons are protected by copyright and which ones are not. There are 3 that are not. These 3 are not creations. Anyone can use Wi-Fi, play soccer or have ideas. The rest are all creations that people have made, so they are automatically protected by copyright. The Copyright Act in Australia dates from 1968 and it applies to work created both before and after that date. It's been amended regularly since 1968 to bring it up to date with evolving technologies and concerns. There was an update on the 18th of December in 2020. The copyright notice consists of the symbol C, followed by the name of the copyright owner and the year of first publication. A copyright notice is not mandatory to get copyright in Australia or most other countries. However, putting a copyright notice on something is very helpful to remind people that the work is protected by copyright. Australian copyright law applies to actions that take place in Australia, even if the material used was first created or published in another country. Time to think again. What would they be? Pause the video if you need time to think about exceptions. There are in fact no general exemptions from copyright law. Allowances to use copyrighted material without permission for personal use are very limited. Australia doesn't have a general fair use exemption like the United States does. We do have something though called fair dealing. Fair dealing includes for research or study. Now this is for you, which is very handy. It also includes for criticism or review, of books, movies, shows. For parody or satire, like some cartoons or memes on social media. For reporting the news, online or TV, radio, for example. Enabling a person with a disability to access the material. And for lawyers and patent attorneys or trademark attorneys to use as part of our justice system to provide professional advice. To work out if your use of copyrighted material is fair, you should consider, are you using it for study? Are you using only part of the work? If the work cannot be used in part, for example, a drawing or a cartoon or a photo or even perhaps a whole article from a newspaper, you can still use it if you can justify its purpose in your study. For example, it may be that you want to put a map into your work and it would not make sense to have half a map. So you would be able to justify its purpose in your work. Moral rights attribute the author of the work you copy to give them credit. These were added to the Copyright Act in December 2000. This is to ensure that the creator of the work is credited for their work, regardless of their desire for economic gain. In Australia, moral rights are automatically assigned. There's no need to add a notice to the work. Some Australian creators choose to do so because this is not the case everywhere in the world. In the UK and New Zealand, for example, you have to write it on the work. For you, the moral rights of creators of work mean that you need to attribute the author of the work you copy if you're using it for fair dealing. You do this by referencing your work, include at least the author's name and the URL of websites in your work near the image or at the end of the text. You can see how this is done in the cartoon here. It's best if you add a link to the URL with your image. I've added the URL at the bottom because you can't see that I've added the link. So attribution is really important when you are using other people's work so that you do comply with copyright laws. And the reasons for this are to ensure that you are giving credit to the author of the work and to show that you haven't plagiarised. There's a definition of attribution on the screen there for you. It's essential in all your research so you comply with copyright laws, no matter whose work you are using. So always look for the author's name and the URL. And make sure that you're not using this person's work for commercial gain to make money. Okay, so if I put this image in this PowerPoint like I have done, am I following copyright law when I do that? Yes, I am. I've attributed it, which means I've put the creator's name on there and I've included the URL of where it came from. It would be linked as well back to the URL, back to the website, and I'm using it for educational purposes. So I'm following one of those reasons listed in fair dealing. If the social media platform allows sharing of content, it is legal. Most do. If you are allowed to share it, you can. If it lets you share it, you can. The users of a lot of social media platforms agree to terms and conditions when they post, and that includes sharing. That includes copyrighted works. Other than this, the same copyright rules apply to social media as they do to all other online and printed works. But basically, if the social media sites let you share content, then it is legal because the people who posted it originally have agreed to that in their terms and conditions. Now, public domain is another term that you might not be familiar with. Works are in the public domain when their copyrights have expired. In Australia, this happens 70 years after the author has died, or if the author chooses them to be there by adding a public domain dedication to them. These works can be altered or used for any purpose without permission. You can search for works in the public domain by adding those words into the search bar. Now, this is an outline of an activity for you to do. It's called a 4Cs analysis, and it includes you reflecting on all of the slides to find the key concepts explained to you in this video and to find connections that you've made to knowledge that you already had. See if you can find a change to your thinking now. Have you learned something new? And is there an idea that you'd like to challenge that you've heard about in this PowerPoint? Or do you still have a question that needs an answer? Pause the video now to do this task. You'll need a few minutes to make it your best work. Okay, now let's check that we've achieved the learning intentions and the success criteria. The first success criteria was being able to give examples that are not covered by Australian copyright laws in Australia. Can you do this? Can you explain why it's unethical to use someone else's work without attribution? And can you explain how to use copyrighted works in your own studies? If you've done that, you've achieved the goals for this lesson. On the next slide, references, so that I can say that I have attributed all of the resources that I used to make it, and in case you want to look up anything else that you need to that you're interested in regarding copyright in Australia.